This is Paint Life TV. I'm Chris the Idaho Painter. Today we're going to give you some tips and tricks when it comes to sanding cabinet doors and sanding furniture. We're doing some repainting of cabinets, cabinet doors, and furniture also. And I'm going to give you some tips and tricks to getting an ultra flat finish when it comes to sanding. So if you want to see us sanding cabinet doors and getting that ultra flat finish, the professional look, stay tuned for this video. All right, here we are. We're working with some cabinet doors. These are lacquered cabinet doors. We're going to be sanding them and getting them ready for a finish. We're going to be putting on a coating Centurion 2K poly. It's going to be a catalyzed product we're going to be spraying on here, and we want to get a factory-like finish. We want to get an ultra flat finish, and I'm not talking about a flat finish, but an ultra flat finish. And part of getting that finish is having an inspection light, having a table to work on where you can see all the imperfections. Now these cabinet doors hanging in the kitchen, they look pretty good. They looked pretty awesome. They used to be a wood. They were an alder, knotty alder. It was all filled, and then they were sprayed with a lacquer, multiple coats of a high build lacquer. And if you look at them in an inspection light, there's a lot of surface tension to these cabinet doors. There's a lot of ripples in them. There's a lot of imperfections in them that you can't see in just regular lighting. If I'm looking at it like this, I can't really see any of those imperfections. The benefits of having an inspection light and an inspection table is you can get that ultra flat finish, that finish that has no imperfections in it. So I can set it on here. I can see a lot of surface tension. I can see kind of some eggshelliness to that sprayed on coat that was done before with an HVLP sprayer. I want this thing to be absolutely glass, and I don't want to have any surface tension. I don't want to have any stippling. And so to get that, to achieve that, you have to get it sanded completely flat. Sanding is extremely important. We're going to be using a 3x4 sander. This is by far the best sander you can ever use when it comes to cabinet repainting. It makes the sanding process actually enjoyable, makes it fun. It doesn't make it this tedious, hard thing to do. You can sand profiles, you can sand contours. I typically have 1/2 inch open cell sponges for sanding contours, rounded edges. I have closed cell sponges, 10 millimeter and 5 millimeter for doing any shaker style doors. And I'm gonna have all these abrasives available to me right here on my inspection table, and it's going to make a quick turnaround if I got to switch abrasives. They are hook and loop, so I can just quickly change those if I need to. But I want to get a ultra flat finish on here, so I want to sand flat. One thing is you don't want to use any type of open cell sponges when you're sanding on these flat surfaces, because they're just going to contour to any type of grain, contour to any type of uneven surfaces, and you're not going to get it flat. Part of getting that ultra flat finish, that factory-like finish, is getting a flat sand. So we want to use a flat surface that doesn't have any type of give to it. You could use a pad saver in between here if you have inexperienced people using the sanders. If they burn through the paper they're using, this is plastic, it's not paper, so it's very durable. But to protect your pad here from getting damaged to the hook and loop, you could use a pad saver. But I want to get an ultra flat finish on here, so I'm not going to use a pad saver in between here. And I'm going to begin sanding. Part of this, the inspection processes, I got my table right here, I got my light right here. You can see Bondo. I've used Bondo glazing putty, so I've got Bondo glazing putty right here that I use to fill any nicks and dings prior to any sanding. So I'm going to set my my door on here. I'm going to inspect this door, try to find anything that wouldn't sand out easily, nicks, dings, cracks, that I can fill first, and then we're going to begin sanding. But I'm going to show you a little bit of the techniques of sanding here, what it looks like to sand flat. Hopefully we can get some close-up video of what this looks like, kind of the surface tension, the eggshelliness, what it looks like to not be flat. We're going to sand this, and we're going to show you what an amazing finish looks like, and kind of that just whole next level factory-like professional finish with a 2K poly from Centurion Coatings. So now I'm just going to start off sanding. I got my inspection table. I've got a light cast set across here. So this is a light. You can get these lights from paintlifesupply.com, and it's an LED light, and you have to have the proper lighting cast across your surface so you can see all the unevenness. You can see anything that's not flat. You could, if things are in front of the light that's obstructing the light casting across it, you just want to set those things aside and out of the way so you can get your light casted across this table and casted properly. I typically have my my sander next to me close where I can hang a lot of this stuff on, and we'll get that over here and show you what it looks like. I got I'm not a sander, but my vacuum has a tool shelf on it that houses all that stuff. I do have to, after all my sanding's done, I got my cup hooks right here that I can screw my cup hooks in because we always spray hanging. But now my table is free from obstructions. The way this light is, I actually mounted my light on a kind of just a 1x3 piece of trim, and the light swivels so you can cast that light, whatever direction you want to give the right light so you can see all the imperfections, across your door here. I can see a lot of unevenness, a lot of eggshelliness across that door, and we're going to eliminate that by sanding. So I'm starting off, I always do my initial sand very first. I typically am going to use a Film Tech 220. So this is Unita's Film Tech. It's a plastic abrasive, 3x4 abrasive. It's going to go on here, right onto my sander, and I'm going to begin sanding flat. I'm going to be very careful when I come to my edges not to get too far over and begin rounding my edge. I want it to be flat, so I'm not going to come out too far. I'm going to come up and over and sand. Some of the tips with sanding: don't put too much pressure. Just allow the sander to do the work for you. I'm just going to hold it in place. It's got a paddle on off, and I'm just going to begin doing my sanding. Now I sanded that right there flat, and it happens extremely fast if you have a good sander. The EcoSand 3x4 sander is absolutely amazing. It sanded that flat, eliminated all the eggshelliness. Also, part of making sanding enjoyable is not getting all dusty and dirty. Having it hooked up to a vacuum system. This is a HEPA-Vac system, and it keeps a dust-free environment when sanding. So I'm going to continue sanding. I'm going to do my flats first, and then we're going to begin doing our profiled edges. We always do our fronts and backs of the doors. One thing, it is good practice to always do the backs first, flip it over and do the fronts, because if you do your backs first and you don't have it on a good clean surface, there's any contamination, if there's anything rough or anything that could scratch the face, you don't want it to scratch the face. You want to do your face last and the back first. You can see there's large knots in here, so these large knots, this is what it looked like on the other side of the door. I'll give you little tips and tricks when it comes to filling these knots. These are really large. You don't want to use Bondo glazing putty to do anything large in the beginning. You want to use spackle. So I'm going to do the initial fill with spackle, sand that, and then I'm going to use Bondo glazing putty over the top of that. So I'm going to sand the back of this door. The knots on the backs weren't filled before, which I don't think is really a good finished look to it. So we're going to actually fill these knots on the backs of all these doors this time when these cabinets are repainted. I'll show you some sanding. I typically would fill this first, but I'm just going to sand this, and then we're going to fill it. So this is this type of door I'm talking about. This is the back side of a door, and this is more of a shaker style door. So you got this lip right here. If I run my sander up against this, you're gonna get some vibration on the sander running up against there. You could damage the pad on your sander. That's where these 10mm sponges really come in handy when sanding, because it's not gonna, your sanding pad's not gonna ride up against there, and it's not gonna damage the edge. So this is a really short lip, so a 5mm sponge is gonna work great for that. I'm gonna switch over to a 5mm, and now I can begin sanding. So I got my my vacuum here. This is my vacuum with where I typically keep all my tools hanging and available for me. I do have back problems standing and stuff, so I do like to sit down now when I'm actually sanding. It just makes it a little bit more pleasant. I've got I keep all my abrasives down here on my sander, but it's kind of cool having this tool shelf. I keep my mask hanging there. This is what I vacuum with. And this is a horsehair into my vacuum, a battery operated vacuum. It's what I vacuum with when I'm all done sanding. So here's what it looks like sanding on the back side, the shaker style. So that's what it looks like, sanding shaker style. Now I'm gonna be back to my front side. I'm gonna begin doing contours, working on these contours. So I'm gonna use a open cell sponge that's gonna contour to all these routed edges here. So I wanna get rid of any type of surface tension on these edges also. So one of the great things about these sponges too, you can offset them. So I slightly offset the sponge so I can work on that contoured edge right there. When I'm working on my contoured edges, I'm using EcoSilk Plus, and this is a medium sponge. It cuts a little bit faster on those contoured edges. I can slightly offset it a little bit more when I'm working on these larger contours right here, so I can get it in here. Now I'm going to take and look at I've got all the initial sanding done, and I keep a couple tools handy here because I see a few little things on my door, some little imperfections, kind of little sharp edge right here, a little piece of dust got painted on in there. I'm going to just scrape that off. This light is going to show you all these little tiny things, and I use a Linbide scraper to, if I see anything down, there's something right here, down here, I can use a Linbide scraper to scrape it off, or you can use like a putty knife to scrape it off that doesn't have an edge. Sometimes having a sharp edge is a little advantage. It's a little, there, got it off. Now I'm looking for everything. I want these cabinets to be absolutely perfect. Now where I scraped that, I'm going to resand that, and then this door will be done. Now through the sanding process, I can see a little tiny nick right here that didn't sand out, and I've got a couple tiny dings right here. I can continue trying to sand that out of the finish. I might ended up cutting down into the old finish, cutting down into the wood, which would cause me to have to prime it. So I'm just going to Bondo those let that dry, and then we will take and re-sand it. So I'm gonna vacuum this off, and I'll show you, I keep a battery operated vac next to me so I can just vacuum these things off and get them clean, ready to be painted. So once you get the sanding done, you can maybe see some other stuff. I see another little thing down inside here. Piece of dust or something that got painted on, built up. So everybody's kitchens, you have different lighting. And so you could have somebody's kitchen that just acts just like an inspection light that would show all these imperfections. And so you definitely want to get these things taken care of. Now I can see it looking through my light. I can see a ding here, and looks like I got one right there. And I'll show you the filling, the Bondo glazing putty. So there's a lot of different things you could put your Bondo on. You put it on a stir stick. Sometimes I like, this is just a piece of cardboard, and it's got a coating on the other side so it doesn't absorb the moisture out of the Bondo, so it doesn't dry as fast. It gives you a little bit more working time. But you're gonna see there's a nick right here, and you can see how I just scraped it, and you'll start to see it show up. It's right, there's a little ding right there. There's a little ding right there. So I'm just gonna leave a little bit of Bondo behind, a little bit high. It sands really fast and easy. I'll get rid of those dings. There's one right here. And that's looking pretty good. There's nothing on the edges, sides. I'm gonna flip this over. We're gonna fill with spackle the backside knots. There was some nicks, dings. These are smaller nicks and dings. That spackle is not good because it's too small to fill. Holes like that, the spackle will sand out really easy. Little tiny nicks and dings like this, Bondo glazing putty is what you wanna use. Want to get a really flat finish. We're after that ultra flat finish. This cabinet door is pretty banged up on the back side. We don't want the customer to be looking at banged up doors, so we want indentations where the hinges were previously. All right, now I use, done with that. And I use Crawford's spackle to do my filling with spackle. So I'll show you our Crawfords here, and we'll fill these backside knots. So I really like Crawford spackle. It's more dense, a little bit harder. It's not a lightweight spackle, but it's a good interior, exterior spackle. So I'm gonna spackle my holes. Spackle's a little bit dry. Spackle definitely dries out, so you can take re-wet it. I'm gonna put some water inside there, re-wet that. But that's gonna fill large holes, so I'm gonna put spackle first, sand that, and then we'll back it with Bondo. A lot of this cabinet has really taken a beating on the back side of it. So there's a lot of more nicks and dings. I want to fill those before I sand again. So we'll fill all these nicks and dings. So here's another pointer sanding. I want to just go over this, and this is, I'm teaching one of my apprentices how to sand to get flat finishes and stuff, and how to properly use the sander and all. You can see this door. This was the very first door that he did, and this is a good example of when you're actually sanding and trying to get that flat finish and keeping the profile of this door looking the same. You don't want to overrun your sander over these edges, because the sander is going to have a tendency tendency to tilt or rotate. Instead of having a flat surface, it's going to start to contour that surface down. Now, this sanding right here, what happened was he came over, gets too far over, and he starts to tilt the sander this direction, and it begins to rotate that profile down. It begins to cut through the other finish. It actually cut through the finish, the stain, and down into bare wood, and that's going to need to be primed. It happened, same thing on here. So what you want to do, this was a combination of multiple things, getting over the edge and actually putting too much downward pressure on the sander as you rotate over that edge. So I'll show you, the flat sanding, what it actually looked like. It's just a light, you want to be just gentle with this sander. You're going to hold it in your palm to control the sander. Let the sander do the work. If you put too much pressure, you'll get swirls. Not enough pressure, you'll get swirls also. But we're trying to control it, trying to keep it on the flat surface so it sands flat. All right, I'm continuing right along doing my sanding, inspecting, and I'm gonna just give you a little tip. There's sometimes, occasionally, you'll burn into, beyond your previous coating into wood. The product that we're using, the 2800 series product that we spray with, it is a self-seal product. Sometimes you may have to add a third coat if you get into sand into the wood pretty deeply, and because it's going to absorb your coating, and the first coat actually acts as a seal coat, and then your next coat would be your top coat. And so there's occasionally you might have to do a third coat. You can just spray on a vinyl sealer. CIC has a vinyl sealer that you can seal this bare wood first before you do your top coat. So I can just take these edges where I did burn in there and just spray a vinyl sealer on here. I'll do my final sand and make sure I don't cut through that, and that will actually seal that bare wood. So it's nice to have a can of vinyl sealer. I also use the vinyl sealer for when I spray my first coat. If there's any contaminants on this door, you're gonna actually see it because it's gonna fisheye. And the vinyl sealer or a shock bomb can works amazing for eliminating fisheyes. So it resolves any type of contamination issues you may have in spraying cabinets. I gotta say, I don't think there's ever been a cabinet job that I've ever done before in my career where one of the doors did not have a contaminant, even after cleaning it, even after sanding it, that didn't fisheye. So having a can of vinyl sealer is an absolute must when doing cabinet doors. So another part of flat sanding, getting a really good sanded surface, is having a good clean surface to be sanding on. I want to make sure, because I'm doing bondoing, spackling and stuff like that, I don't want to have anything hard on this paper. I like paper down for a nice soft surface to be laying on, but I don't want anything rough, anything that could be scratching my finish. I'm going to feel this occasionally, the paper, and make sure it doesn't have anything on it. A dried spackle, anything that's going to be rough or hard. I've been doing some caulking, spackling on here. Just make sure you have a good, soft, givable surface and a clean surface to be sanding on. And if it's not, just scrape it like this, get it all nice and clean, and then vacuum it occasionally. So every time I vacuum one of my doors, I typically vacuum the surface of my table also to keep it clean. So once again, it's great having a battery operated. I got a Bosch vacuum down here. It's like that, good clean surface. Now I'm gonna continue my filling and my sanding. So we're continuing right along, just doing our sanding, filling. When I'm working, trying to get this ultra flat finish, also pay attention to your seams in your cabinet doors. We definitely want to make sure those seams are getting filled so you don't see any types of seams. Once again, having an inspection light is absolutely critical. Having the inspection light casting right at the right angle is also important, also to getting that flat finish. This door is looking pretty dang good. Looking almost imperfection free. I got a few, now and then we keep seeing these little, they're probably, pieces of dust, pieces of caulking or something, because these doors were actually caulked also. It's a little high spots in these edges right here, just sanding those things out. You never know what the customer is gonna pick out, so you just want to make sure your doors are flawless. We're trying to get the flawless finish that we can. You can see I do got a table, a paint line drying rack, right next to me. It's good to have a racking system right next to you so you can, work with your doors, pulling them back and forth nice and easily. If you're spraying flat, it's the perfect rack for spraying flat on a spray twirly and then stacking them on that. That's a rack with 4 screws, breaks down really easily and can transport to your job site. So there you have it, some simple tips in getting that ultra flat finish, sanding cabinet doors, or even sanding furniture, working around furniture and cabinet doors at the same time here, in our spray booth on this project. Got our paint line spray booth back behind us. That's working absolutely amazing in this environment. If you got any tips or tricks when it comes to sanding, getting the ultra professional finish, leave it down in the comment section below. We'd love to hear what you have to say. We learn from you just like you learn from us. If you've enjoyed this video, if you've learned anything from it, please consider giving us a thumbs up. We really appreciate it. Helps motivate us to keep making these videos. And once again, we'll see you next time right here on Paint Life TV.